All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we are stepping right onto the modern e-discovery battlefield. We're going to look at the massive, frankly overwhelming volumes of digital information your organization creates every single day. And we'll explore why proactive information governance is absolutely, without a doubt, the only way to survive when legal trouble comes knocking. Let's just put it out there right away. If you aren't managing your data proactively, you're essentially sitting on a ticking time bomb. So, what actually happens to all that data when a sudden lawsuit hits? Well, for unprepared companies, a legal request triggers what's known as the dreaded post-litigation scramble. And honestly, it is pure chaos. Legal suddenly demands emails from 3 years ago. IT is frantically searching undocumented servers, probably pulling their hair out. Executives are panicking over the massive operational disruption. It's this frantic, ad hoc scramble to find digital evidence that usually costs an absolute fortune, completely derails daily operations, and exposes the company to massive legal risk. And here's the thing, the courts have drawn a really hard line on this chaos. Listen to this quote directly from the source material. There are no excuses for a custodian to fail to preserve and protect electronically stored information. Basically, the moment your organization has a reasonable anticipation of litigation, boom, a legal duty to preserve kicks in. You absolutely cannot go to a judge and say, hey, sorry, we couldn't find those emails because our servers are a mess, or we just don't track what employees save on their laptops. Ignorance of your own data landscape, yeah, that's simply not an excuse anymore. So how do we stop the bleeding? The operational cure to all of this madness is information governance. Now, this is far beyond just another IT buzzword. It's a strict accountability framework governing the entire data lifecycle. It shifts your digital files from this chaotic, sprawling horde into highly managed assets. And it does this long before investigators ever show up. It means having definitive rules in place so you know exactly who owns what data, exactly how long you keep it, and exactly when you destroy it. But I'll be honest, effective information governance is a really delicate balancing act. Think of it kind of like a three-legged stool, where all three legs have to be perfectly aligned. First up, you have the business users. They want to maximize the business value of information, right? Keep data available to drive revenue and innovation. Second, you have the IT department. Their goal is driving efficiency, keeping storage costs down and systems running super fast. And third, you have legal and compliance, who are entirely focused on fulfilling that legal duty to preserve data. The stakes here are high, folks. If IT purges data early just to save a buck, legal faces sanctions. If legal hoards data forever, well, IT budgets collapse. All three legs absolutely must hold. Now, you might be wondering, why not just buy massive servers and keep literally everything forever just to be safe? We really need to bust that digital hoarding myth right now. On one side, keeping everything is actually a massive legal liability. If you retain decades of useless, outdated data, guess what? You still have to search through all of it and produce it during a lawsuit, which is going to cost you millions in legal review fees. On the flip side, we have effective retention. This is targeted lifecycle management. You keep exactly what you need for business and compliance, and you practice defensible deletion for the rest. Simply put, less data means lower risk and lower costs. Structured retention policies get a bad rap as just corporate red tape, but honestly, they are your organization's absolute best armor. They give you a defensible mechanism to support legal investigations simply because you actually know where your relevant data resides. They ensure legal and regulatory compliance across different jurisdictions. They prove to the courts that you are exercising due diligence as a responsible organization. And, critically, they give you a legal mandate to safely destroy obsolete data so it cannot be weaponized against you later on. To actually make those retention policies a reality, your data needs to move systematically through what's called Information Lifecycle Management, or ILM. Think of this as the governed journey of a document. It starts in hot storage. This is when a file is actively being used, sitting on high-performance, expensive storage for frequent access. Then, as it ages, it moves to cold storage, a cost-effective archive for things you need to keep but rarely touch. Finally, you hit the delete phase. This is the automated deletion of obsolete data once it reaches the end of its legal and business lifespan. True compliance happens silently in the background when this automated lifecycle runs quietly, keeping your organization lean and totally defensible. Okay, but we all know the real world is incredibly messy, right? And this is where IT teams face massive friction. Employees constantly blur the lines with shadow IT. Using personal USBs, SD cards, or some rogue cloud storage account just to get their jobs done. Trying to uncover these hidden data pockets during an investigation is an absolute nightmare. Then there is structured data. You can't just copy a massive database. IT actually has to figure out how to halt complex automated overwrites just to preserve a specific financial or HR record. Add in virtual environments, where managing and extracting data locked inside virtual desktop infrastructure requires highly specialized planning. These operational hurdles make unprepared e-discovery incredibly painful.
Now, here's a massive friction point where proactive systems violently clash with legal realities. We'll call it the danger of auto-delete. Just a moment ago, I was praising automated deletion, right? Well, the catch is that the instant a legal hold is issued, you literally have to slam on the brakes. Those automated retention purges must be suspended immediately for anyone involved in the lawsuit. If your corporate email system automatically deletes messages after 90 days and a relevant email gets purged after you knew about the lawsuit, you have just destroyed evidence. Stopping auto-delete requires precise, immediate, and frankly, flawless coordination between legal and IT.
So how do you actually translate that complex legal duty into a practical IT workflow? It requires strict step-by-step logic. You start by determining what electronically stored information, or ESI, might even be relevant, and then you identify the probable data stores. But crucially, the law does factor in accessibility. You have to weigh the burden of extracting really difficult, hard-to-reach data against its actual legal benefit before deciding if preservation is strictly required. It's a highly structured, logical process. The whole point is to replace blind panic with a defensible, documented strategy. The golden rule here? It absolutely cannot wait for a subpoena to build this strategy. Readiness means proactively mapping your organizational data so you know exactly where it lives before you have to preserve it. It means tracking and monitoring your IT infrastructure to understand how data flows and changes day to day. It means shining a light on those non-traditional shadow IT locations. And most importantly, it means having the architecture and documented procedures in place to enforce system-wide legal holds instantaneously. If you have this strategy dialed in, you are ready for the battlefield. Because if you aren't ready, well, missing data is basically a one-way ticket to claims of bad faith and severe spoliation sanctions. The courts really do not care if your IT environment is overly complex. They don't care if an employee went rogue and used an unauthorized Dropbox account. As far as the courts are concerned, if you overlook unmanaged data, that is simply not a valid legal excuse. They will assume the absolute worst, that you hid or destroyed the data on purpose. Ouch. There's a quote from the source material that really hits the nail on the head here. It says, if a company's information management system or the lack of one contributes to e-discovery difficulty, it is very unlikely to persuade the courts for leniency. The judge fully expects you to have your house in order, period. The burden of knowing the what and where of your electronic information rests entirely on your organization's internal governance practices. Proactive management isn't just a best practice, it's literally your primary defense mechanism in the modern legal system. All right, which brings us to the end of this explainer, and I want to leave you with a provocative question to really chew on. Take a hard look at your own organization right now. Is your data a governed asset, or is it a legal liability just waiting to be discovered? If you don't know where your data is, who has it, or when it gets deleted, you are incredibly vulnerable. I highly encourage you to take what we've covered today, go back to your teams, and proactively audit your data map before that next legal hold arrives. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.